My name is Howard Wilson Carver. I am a senior accountant with Taft, Coleridge, and Woolwich, a long-established Boston accounting firm. I am 50 years old, and I have risen as high up in this firm as I can at all. I specialize in business tax management and am considered an in-house expert on the subject. I make $85,000 a year, plus benefits. I am in excellent physical shape for my age, as I exercise regularly and follow a common-sense dietary regimen. This May, Edith Delaney. Carver and I have been married for 26 years. However, I am not sure we will live to see 27. Edith is what is commonly called an impresario. She organizes and books plays and concerts for major venues in Boston. She is very successful and has been for several years. She is 48 years old, very trim and slender. In fact, she is one of the most attractive women in the Boston social scene. She is very camera-friendly, and her pictures often appear in the society and entertainment pages of our local newspapers. Early in our marriage, Edith and I discovered that we could not have children. There was nothing wrong with me, but Edith apparently had a medical condition that prevented her from becoming pregnant. She took the news stoically, while I was very upset. I wanted children, and Edith said she did too. We talked about adoption, but for one reason or another, the timing was never right. As the years went by, we thought about it less and less. When we first got married, I was the sole breadwinner. My modest salary provided us with a small apartment in Needham. It wasn't easy for us at first, but over time, my promotions and salary increases took the immediate pressure off, and we began to think about the future. When we found out we wouldn't be able to start a family, Edith, or Edie as I began to call her, decided to get a job. I couldn't blame her. Sitting at home all day doing chores and waiting on me seemed like a pointless endeavor for a bright person like her. I advised her to find something to do so we wouldn't be dependent on her paycheck. As luck would have it, she found a job at a booking agency. The agency provided musicians, comedians, actors, dancers, or whoever had the necessary skills to clubs, advertising agencies, theaters, TV studios, and radio stations. It was a modest business, but Edie treated it like a duck to water. Within 2 years, she had increased her bookings by a third, and the innocuous little agency was suddenly playing an important role in Boston's entertainment market. Naturally, her employer, Asser Hirschfeld, was thrilled with her work. Not only was she increasing their business, but she was making her way into the inner sanctum of the advertising world. She was highly visible, and as a result, she was noticed by both executives and potential clients. By the age of 35, Edie had become a well-known personality on the local entertainment scene. By this point, she had overtaken me in terms of income. At this point, the relationship in our marriage changed as well. Edie gained tremendous confidence and became the dominant personality in our union. She was the one who decided who we would entertain. She was the one who chose the restaurants where we would be seen, and she was the one who decided we needed a more fashionable home. Nothing but an address in the Back Bay suited us. It was pushing our finances to the limit, but Edie was persistent. Fortunately, her income grew with her success, and eventually we were able to pay for the spacious, remodeled townhouse she chose. I know it sounds like I turned into a milquetoast, a man who just let his wife run his life, but it happened so gradually that I didn't realize it for a while. By the time I realized my role in our marriage, it was already established and seemed immutable. They say that success breeds success, and in Edie's case, it was undeniably true. She had worked at Iser's firm long enough to build her own clientele, and then, without discussing it with anyone, she had set sail on her own. She came to me the same way she came to Iser, as a fait accompli. At the age of 37, she opened her own agency and stole almost all the valuable clients that Asser Hirschfeld had managed to get. I suppose I could hardly complain. By then, Edie's income far exceeded mine, and most of what we had in property and capital came from her income. I was a lesser luminary. Oh, we were still close. Our personal relationship was still fine. We made love regularly, and she enjoyed my presence when we were alone. It was this comfort that masked what was happening to us. Was I happy? For the most part, yes. Edie was in her element, and I shared in her success. I went to work every day with little to no anxiety. I knew my job inside and out. In fact, I was bored and didn't see any changes on the horizon. I continued on the beaten path and stayed at TC&W. I could never blame my employer for being the cause of stress in my life. As Edie continued to grow, I noticed that I was seeing her less and less often. She was always attending some kind of opening, charity event, or gala. I was invited quite often, but I found that Edie was very polite. She and I both realized that her world was foreign to me. I accompanied her when a partner was needed, but more often than not, she was off wheeling around the city, making acquaintances, pressing the flesh, and getting her picture taken with one celebrity or another. I was the fifth wheel. As we turned 40, Edie continued to grow in the Boston social scene. Her business was gaining momentum and her income was staggering. I remember when we met with the tax accountant 3 years ago, she declared over $500,000 in income. I almost fell out of my chair when I heard that. I couldn't have imagined such a thing. Edie looked completely stunned too. I don't think she really knew how much money she was making. Almost all of it went into a money market account at Fannie Mae. The rest was in her personal account. I think that meeting had a bigger impact on us than I realized. Our marriage evolved into something more hybrid than a conventional union. We were happy in each other's company when we were alone. But when we were in public, Edie seemed to prefer to keep a distance between us. Was she embarrassed of me? Was it because she was the dominant, successful partner and I was the humble accountantpreneur? Also, our only friends were my friends. I learned early on not to invite them to parties at our house when Edie invited her friends. Mine were ignored, and I ended up feeling sorry for them. I mentioned this to Edie more than once, but she dismissed my concerns as imaginary. So today we are with my beautiful, successful, slender, energetic wife and our unusual but seemingly quite workable marriage. I won't embarrass myself by calling myself handsome, but you can't call me ugly either. I have a full head of graying hair. I weigh only a few pounds more than I did in my 20s, and thanks to Edie's generosity, I am very well dressed. Our lives are still active, and we confess our love to each other regularly. I haven't had any reason to feel uncomfortable yet. Howard, I want to talk to you, Edie said as we finished putting the dinner dishes in the dishwasher. Yeah, about what? This is awkward. Let's go into the living room and sit down, she suggested, clearly feeling awkward. This was unusual. I made my way to the couch and sat down. Edie chose the chair across from me. I I don't know how to begin, she stammered. You know I love you. We've been soulmates forever. I would never want to hurt you. I froze in place. Something was going to come crashing down on me, and I was sure I wasn't going to like it. I held my breath. I feel the need to do something to improve my life, she continued, still very unsure. I feel like I'm missing something, and I'm looking for it. It took all my willpower not to interrupt her. I had no idea what my face looked like, but I could feel my blood pressure rising. I've been thinking about, oh, having a lover, she finally said. She looked at me without looking away. She was waiting for my reaction. My thoughts were spiraling out of control. I struggled to keep my balance. I kept my mouth shut. I would make her tell me everything. Howard, you have to understand. This has nothing to do with my love for you or you as a lover. You've been wonderful all these years. It's just that something is eating me up. You know I would never cheat on you. I couldn't. I just can't. That's why I wanted to talk to you about it tonight, she finished, kneading her hands together. I exhaled. A long, slow, muffled whistle as I tried to gather my thoughts. I continued to remain silent. I didn't know how to start. I didn't know how to answer yet. I waited. I could see the disappointment on her face. I wasn't acting the way she expected. I have a very deep and strong voice, probably a quirk of genetics. Many people have told me I look a lot like James Earl Jones. More than one woman has told me she feels my voice. Nice vibe, they tell me. I'm flattered. I also know how to use my voice to my advantage. Edie has rarely heard me do that. Finally, I speak up. No, I say quietly but firmly. What do you mean? She asked with surprise on her face. I said no, I repeated, still calm and in control of myself. Howard, you can't just say no. This is very important to me, she whined. Edith, I said in a calm but firm tone, I will not tolerate infidelity. I have been faithful to you since we first met. When we took our vows in church, I knew I would honor them for the rest of my life. I expect you to do the same. But Howard, she tried again in a pleading tone. No, I said loudly. Don't even try to continue this discussion. You know perfectly well where I stand. I will not change my mind. End of discussion, I said firmly, with a hint of anger. I stood up and looked at her with disdain mixed with disappointment and then walked to my office. I closed the door behind me. I sank into my leather chair and leaned my head back. I tried desperately to pull myself together. I was trying to figure out what this meant for our marriage. At the very least, nothing good. At worst, divorce. I stood up, opened my private closet, and pulled out a decanter and a bottle of cognac from there. I hadn't felt the need for a stiff drink in weeks, but now was just such an occasion. I took a deep breath, trying to stabilize my condition again. I tried to look back and remember if I had any hint of it, but of course, I couldn't think of anything at that moment. My mind was too cluttered with the here and now to remember anything important, much less any subtlety I might have missed. The most I was capable of was listing the highlights. She wanted to take a lover. No matter what she said, she wanted to have a cuckold with me and do it with my permission. It wasn't supposed to happen. But it made me wonder. Had she already cheated on me and now she wanted me to agree to something that was prearranged? I didn't know. How was I supposed to know? And what was it really? Was it a better man, or variety, or a need to feel young again? Or was she setting me up for something else? If so, what was it? I was in a unique situation. If we divorced, I would be the beneficiary. Her income far exceeded mine, and I would be the injured party. She would likely be owed substantial alimony in my favor. It didn't make sense. Why would she risk it? What about her reputation? How would a messy divorce and nasty rumors affect her? It just didn't make sense. Sipping my brandy, I began to relax. Strangely, I wasn't as upset about her attempted betrayal as I'd expected. Why? Had I really seen this coming? I didn't think so. Had we grown distant from each other and I hadn't noticed? Maybe it had something to do with my low status compared to her celebrity. Maybe I was dragging her down in my thoughts. I couldn't answer any of these questions. Gradually, I realized that anger was boiling up inside me. She was treating me with contempt. She had assumed that I would accept her offer, or at least be willing to have a rational discussion. It's unlikely she expected my unconditional refusal. In retrospect, it was the right reaction. No. Leaning back in my chair, I began to plan my response beyond a direct rejection. This wasn't over, I was sure. She would make another attempt, or at least create a distraction. I wanted to be prepared. Edie had shaken my trust in her. It was as if she'd already deceived me and I'd discovered it. What to do? My first impulse was to hire a private investigator to find out what she was up to. Unfortunately, I didn't have any leads to point him in the right direction. Perhaps I was putting the cart before the horse. I needed to do an internal investigation first. If there was one thing I could count on, it was that Edie wouldn't be home for more than one evening this week, and I could be in the house for a few hours. That would give me a chance to look for clues to her plan. In the meantime, I needed a strategy to throw her off balance. It was pretty simple. I would move my stuff into the guest bedroom, and she would sleep alone. That should upset her. It was still early, not 9 o'clock. I left the study and headed for the hall closet to grab a windbreaker. Edie was nowhere to be seen. I walked out the front door and headed out for a walk. I needed to clear my head, but I wanted to get out of the house even more. To my anger was now added sadness. The more I thought about it, the more I wondered if this could be the beginning of the end of our marriage. A marriage that I thought was strong and fulfilling. I didn't want it to be, but I didn't pay attention to where I was going, but eventually realized I was many blocks away from our house. I calmed down enough to consider the circumstances and plan my actions. What I wasn't sure of was my behavior while Edie and I were together. I had a few options. Keep her quiet, act normal, or at least as normal as the situation allowed, show constant anger, maybe even move out temporarily. I pondered a bit on what might be the best strategy. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that I wanted to know more. I wanted Edie to open up and tell me what she was thinking. I wanted to find out as much as I could about her expectations of me. I was sure that was the best way to get to the bottom of this whole episode. I couldn't just accept the status quo. I wouldn't let her use me. I would never be her cuckold. Chapter 2. Gross Miscalculation. Edith. I made a terrible mistake. I don't know what made me think I could convince Howard to agree to me having a lover. However, I didn't expect him to just tell me no. There was no compromise in his tone. It was said with such force that it took me by surprise. I wasn't used to setbacks. I hadn't dealt with them often, and this came as a shock to me. I thought I was so well prepared. I was confident that Howard would realize that this was important to me and would not deny me my need. He had never before denied me something I really wanted. So why did he react so harshly this time? I had to rethink my situation. I love Howard. I know I do, but I need a little thrill in my life. I'm almost 50 and I need it. I need someone to make me feel alive and wanted. God knows, Howard is a wonderful lover. He completely fills me up and is so caring with me. I couldn't ask for a more attentive husband, but I need more. I've really messed things up. I warned him of my intentions. I foolishly made him doubt me. There's no way I can indulge myself if he scrutinizes me. Why should I have warned him? What kind of fool am I? I only made it harder for myself to have an affair. I've already made up my mind. I'm going to do it. I just got off to a bad start. A poorly chosen strategy. I need to step back and think about what to do. After wandering around the house, I noticed the door to his office was open, but he was no longer there. I tried the living room, then the kitchen, but he was nowhere to be found. I looked in the hall closet and noticed his windbreaker was gone. He was gone. Where had he gone? Would he be back tonight? I felt fear in my stomach. This was turning into a nightmare. I poured myself a strong gin and tonic and continued to wander around the house. Howard didn't have a cell phone, so there was no way to call him. And would he answer even if he could? I need a way out of this. I need to make him forget I did something stupid. Repairing the damage done will be a long, slow process. I need to make things right. I looked at the clock for the 100th time. It was already 10:30 p.m., and Howard was still nowhere to be seen. It was dark outside, and I had no idea where he was. We didn't have a car, so he either walked or called a cab. I couldn't remember him just leaving like that without saying anything. He could have been mugged. Or worse. I went into his office and saw a decanter of brandy on the table. It was almost empty, with only a small amount of amber liquid at the bottom of the glass. He'd poured himself at least one drink before he left. I took another sip, noticing that the glass was almost empty. I wasn't feeling very good. In fact, I was even delirious. It was well past 11 when I heard the front door open. I hurried into the living room to make sure it was him. As he took off his jacket and hung it on the coat rack, he avoided my gaze. "Howard, where have you been?" I was so worried. "I went for a walk. I needed some time to think," he replied simply. There was no anger or annoyance in his voice. "I'm sorry, Howard. I didn't mean to upset you. I would never hurt you. You know that. I don't know what made me think I could. I mean, I couldn't go on. Nothing I said could fix the situation or bring it back. I desperately needed Howard to talk to me. Please give me something I could respond to." "Never." "I'll move my things to the guest room. I'll sleep there for now," he announced. No, Howard, please. Please don't leave me. Talk to me. Please." I knew I was begging, but I had to do it. He turned to me, his eyes cold and his expression calm. "I'm not in the mood to share a bed with you, and I'm not ready to talk to you right now. We'll discuss our future tomorrow. At the earliest." He said it so forcefully, in a deep, sonorous voice, leaving no room for argument. I felt so helpless. I had freed this dog, and now I had to find a way to drive him back into the pen. "Talk to me, Howard. Please don't shut me out." I said I'll talk to you when I'm ready, but not before. I saw anger on his face for the first time. I'd pushed too hard. I'd have to be patient until he was ready. I couldn't think of anything else to do. I turned and slowly walked up the stairs to our bedroom. I'll be alone tonight, and it's unlikely I'll be able to sleep. I don't know when I finally fell asleep, but when I woke up, I felt sluggish and not rested. I finally got out of bed and, throwing on a robe, headed for the kitchen. As I passed the guest room, the door was open, and I was surprised to see that the bed was already made. When I got to the kitchen, Howard was nowhere to be found. He had already left for work. His breakfast plates were in the sink, and the coffee maker stood quietly in its place, missing one cup. I pulled out a mug and poured myself the first cup of what I assumed would be several that day. I checked the messages in the office and left a message for the secretary that I would be out for the afternoon. I remembered that I had to attend a premiere in the evening. It was the last thing I wanted to do, especially if Howard wanted to talk to me. Nevertheless, I was determined to do it and simply owed Howard an apology. I realized that I would have to do this often in the weeks and months to come. Chapter 3. Recovery Strategy. Howard. I got up early in the morning so I wouldn't have to face Edie. I needed a free day to think about my next steps. I noticed that Eddie had an event planned for the evening and smiled. That would give me time to prepare. It would put off talking to her for another day and give me a chance to start looking for evidence of her bad behavior. It was hoped that, as usual, only a major disaster would prevent her from coming to the scheduled event. Perhaps the long walk the previous evening was to blame, or maybe it was the fact that I had started to map out my future. I had gotten a good night's sleep. I woke up refreshed and surprisingly confident. I had a rough plan of action and a sense of direction. Yes, I would no longer be Howard Carver, obliging husband and, as some might think, eunuch. That's a role I intended to rectify. I think Edie is in for a big surprise when she discovers she doesn't have the husband she thought she had at all. I will not give in anymore. I will use my voice to make my opinions clear. From now on, I will dominate. It will be part of my new identity. During the day, I occupied myself by asking my secretary not to call me externally unless it was urgent. As I expected, shortly before 3 in the afternoon, Edie called and left a message saying she would be attending a theater performance and wouldn't be back for dinner. She was very apologetic and promised we could talk tomorrow. I left early in the morning and got home an hour earlier than usual. As usual, I had to cook my own meal from what I could find in the refrigerator and pantry. I opted for soup and a sandwich with a glass of red wine. Simple, quick, and easy to clean up after myself. I wanted to get started on my search. I started with Edie's computer. She wasn't a power user, and I knew from previous experience that she kept her calendar and email correspondence in Outlook, as I did. I was surprised to discover that she had password-protected access to the operating system. I had no idea she knew how to do this, but nevertheless, some form of protection was provided. I wondered why. I tried several obvious passwords, but to no avail. I knew she had only a general understanding of computers and suspected that any password would be simple or memorable. After going through all the possible options, I sat back to think. As I stared at the screen, I realized that the monitor was on a stand. I lifted the front edge of the notepad and found a small note with 4 alphanumeric 8-digit codes. I tried entering the last one, and the computer obligingly let me in. I opened her mailbox and found nothing in her inbox. She had created several files, and they all appeared to be related to her business. I began methodically going through each one of them to find something interesting. It was a tedious endeavor, but I took it on. Eventually, I opened a file labeled Ginny and found a series of letters addressed to someone named Ginny. I started reading them, as it was a completely different type of correspondence than all the other files. It was almost like a diary. As I realized, she was sharing her experiences, opinions, and hopes with another woman. As I read, I marveled at how candid she was in these messages. She talked about her life, about me, about her social and business contacts. To start, I read 5 messages and then paused. I reflected on what they contained. She was expressing a longing for some stimulus in her life. She professed her love for me, but hoped that something interesting would come along that would shake up her world. That something remained unclear until last night when she revealed exactly what she had in mind. I continued to read Ginny's posts. It was almost like listening to a therapist. Unasked questions were answered, as if the therapist was right there with her at that moment. Upon closer inspection of the file, I noticed that there were no incoming messages, only outgoing messages from Edie to Jeannie. Had she really deleted her email account? I checked the deleted messages file, but found nothing. I didn't get any useful information except that she was sharing her innermost feelings with someone other than me. I methodically reread the messages in the file for over an hour until I came across one that stopped me. It was titled Family, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. In it, Edie admitted that at the beginning of our marriage, she had intentionally avoided pregnancy. She didn't want children. She tried to make me believe it was a physical problem even though she had been using birth control the whole time. After she had a career, she had her tubes tied to avoid accidents. Her reasoning was simple. She didn't want to raise her children and interfere with their social life. After she went back to work, it became an obsession for her. She only barely acknowledged my disappointment. She hid her betrayal well. I never found out about it until that very moment. I was furious. This was a long-standing deception. This could have been the very act that would destroy our marriage. We had talked about children before we were married, and even in the beginning. As I pondered what she had done, I began to recall my thoughts of the previous evening. I had to admit that I was aware of Edie's selfishness. She did what satisfied or entertained her without regard for the needs of others, including me. Because I acquiesced so easily, she was rarely denied anything. Now I realized how wrong I had been in my judgment. While I was permissive, Edie was unquestioning. She saw no reason to change her self-centered lifestyle. Everything had to change. Dealing with the new me was going to come as a shock to my wife. It'll be interesting to see how she handles it. If she did, I was at the stage where I didn't care. She had conspired to cheat me out of my family, and for that I would not forgive her. It remained to be seen if she had already been unfaithful. I continued flipping through the folder, but there were no new shocking revelations. Whoever Jeannie was, she had a wealth of information about our love life. Edie talked about our sex life. She seemed completely satisfied with her own and my actions. There was no hint that I didn't treat her with love and respect. That made her statement from yesterday even more incomprehensible. I quickly checked the rest of her email folders and found nothing of interest. Everything was business-related. I closed the email and logged out, shutting down the computer. I sat there pondering what to do next. Glancing at the clock, I saw that it was 10 o'clock and decided that was enough for one night. 10 minutes later, I was already in bed in the guest room and fell asleep almost immediately. I didn't hear Edie come home. I woke up early again, but sleep was not sound. I dozed off, and then I was awakened by some violent dream that I couldn't remember. I slipped back into slumber and then woke up abruptly, trying to cope with the thoughts that came over me. Like the day before, I left for work before Edie got up. We didn't usually socialize during the day, but yesterday was one of those days. We were both home today, and I expected the conversation to take place in the evening. I was getting better prepared by the hour, and now all that was left was to decide what I was going to tell her. I knew for sure that I would take matters into my own hands and drive the conversation. The days of her controlling the agenda were over. Chapter 4. Day of Reckoning, Edith. Another night without sleep. I was exhausted when I got home from last night's theater premiere. I should have slept soundly, but the confusion reigning in my head prevented me from doing so. 2 nights without sleep would not help me cope with what lay ahead. Perhaps I could take a nap sometime during the day before Howard came home. And I wasn't very effective last night at the opening ceremonies. I didn't concentrate very well. I met all the people I had planned to meet, but I didn't manage to strike up any meaningful conversations. Perhaps a rest before talking to Howard would have helped me calm down. As I lay in bed that morning, I thought about what I had to do. I must convince Howard that I had given up the idea of having an affair. I have to make him believe that I belong to him alone, and that my request last night was nothing more than the hallucinations of a menopausal woman. Of course, he might believe that such a thing is possible. I stopped taking hormone replacement therapy after they started freaking me out. Maybe I can blame it on that. I told Ginny about my confrontation with Howard. She scolded me for being so careless. She knew about my desire to have a lover. She disapproved. She warned me that Howard would never accept it. She can't understand why I want to cheat on him. She sees him as the perfect husband. Of course she's right. He is perfect. Too perfect. Why do I strive so hard for self-destruction? Why do I think I can have my wonderful husband and another man on the side? I don't understand myself. It's not that I didn't have experience with other men before Howard and I met. I know the difference. I know how much better Howard is than other men. What's pushing me over this cliff? Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I need psychiatric help. Maybe it has something to do with menopause. Too many questions, too much confusion. I couldn't solve them lying in bed. It was time to get up and take a shower. Eat something. To think about what I wanted to say tonight. To be ready. Not to let Howard get the upper hand again. I made it through the day. After lunch, I laid down and slept for almost 2 hours. I felt better. But I felt like my nervousness had bottomed out. I wasn't calm at all. If I couldn't pull myself together and calm down, Talking to my husband tonight would become even more difficult. By 5:30, I decided to make myself a strong gin and tonic to calm my nerves. Howard arrived at his usual time just before 6. I waited for him in the kitchen. I had prepared one of his favorite dishes. I wanted him to be in the best mood possible. Despite the drink, I still wasn't myself. I'd have another drink when Howard had his usual glass of wine. I heard his footsteps in the hallway. "Hey, Howard." I'm sure my words sounded as uncertain as I felt. "Edith." He used my formal name. He hadn't called me Edie since that conversation. At least he acknowledged me. "Dinner will be ready in a few minutes. Why don't you freshen up and have a glass of wine while you wait?" There was nothing unusual about my suggestion. He nodded and headed upstairs to the bedroom. I made myself another glass of strong G&T while I waited for him to return. He returned a few minutes later and poured himself his usual Cabernet. "How was your day?" he asked. "Normal. Nothing out of the ordinary. Normal." I wasn't very confident, and I'm sure he sensed it. He nodded. There was a deafening silence. I wanted to break it, to say something, to make some noise at least. "I'm sorry I didn't see you yesterday," I finally managed. "I know you wanted to talk." "We'll talk after dinner," he said calmly. Calmly. He was calm. There was no sign of discomfort or nervousness, unlike me. I was sure he could read my confused emotions. I busied myself with preparing plates and utensils. I needed something to keep my hands busy. I checked the oven at least twice, trying to make the timer go faster. Seconds seemed like minutes, and minutes seemed like hours. Finally, the bell rang, and I almost jumped up to the oven door. We ate in almost complete silence. I made a couple of remarks about yesterday's opening, and Howard nodded politely. He said something about meeting with the vice president late next week, but I didn't understand what it was about. I couldn't concentrate. His outward calmness was maddening. How could he be so calm when I was in such turmoil? Finally, the meal was over. We cleared the table and put the dishes in the dishwasher. It only took a couple minutes to wash and dry what didn't fit in the machine, and we were done. As always, Howard helped. When everything was ready, I waited to see what Howard had to say. I knew he understood that I was going to let him take the lead. I just wanted to get this over with as soon as possible. "Let's go into the living room," he finally said. "I'm going to pour myself a brandy before we talk. Would you like something?" "Yes, probably a G&T," I said, quickly pulling out a glass and bottle. He disappeared into his study for a moment, came back with the glass and sat down in the same place he had sat 2 nights before. I returned from the kitchen and sat in the chair opposite, just as before. Things were about to begin, and I anxiously waited to see what would happen in the next few minutes. Chapter 5. Declaration, Howard. I forced myself to be calm and collected. I could see how my behavior was bothering Edie, and I wanted to keep that calm. I continued to call her by her formal name. There would be no caressing tonight. "Edith, I want you to listen very carefully to everything I have to say. This is not going to be a two-way discussion. I will tell you what I want to say, and you will listen. If you can't, then there is no reason for us to discuss anything. I will give you every chance to express your opinion, but not today. Do I make myself clear?" Her eyes widened. There was no way she had expected this. She nodded understandingly. "Well, let me first tell you the implications of your confession on Monday night. First of all, I am deeply disappointed that you don't respect me." I saw her raise her head and was about to say something when I raised my hand. She stopped, and at the same moment her breath caught. "I don't know how I can allow the thought of sitting still while you make a cuckold out of me. If you think years of submitting to your whims have turned me into a spineless wimp, you're going to have to come up with something else." I want to repeat what I said then. I will not tolerate infidelity on your part. If you choose to ignore my warning, I will divorce you, and I can say with certainty that there will be no reconciliation. Do I understand correctly? I spoke very forcefully, using the full force of my voice to emphasize my determination. "Yes, I understand, but—" I raised my hand again to remind her of my intention to give, not receive. "You have severely damaged our relationship. You've undermined the foundations of our marriage and questioned your fidelity. You have destroyed what good marriages are built on: trust. You planted doubts in my mind, doubts I never had before. I'm not sure our marriage will survive this." I saw her catch her breath and widen her eyes. With that, I hurt her deeply. I had planted the seeds of uncertainty in her mind as well. Uncertainty about her future with me. I've had time to think about what I should do now that you've created this situation. You admitted you loved me, and until this Monday, I had every reason to believe you. Now, I'm not so sure anymore. And she lifted up in her chair again as if she wanted to say something to refute my fears. This time I just stared at her in silence, and she sank back into the chair and said nothing. You tell me you would never hurt me, and yet you would humiliate me by giving yourself to another man. I can't imagine how you could think I wouldn't feel the pain of that. I wonder, after all these years, do you really know me? You definitely made me wonder if I knew you. I blame myself for not being more decisive in our marriage. I let your success and connections in the community belittle my role. In retrospect, I can say that was a mistake. I am not now and will never be your errand boy. I am an equal in this marriage and will settle for nothing less. I realize, Edith, that you are selfish. You think of yourself first and foremost to the exclusion of everyone else, including me. Are the people you socialize with true friends? Can you count on them when you really need them? I want you to think about our old real friends, Edith. Where are they? Do you ever think of them? Of course, I know the answer to that question. I keep in touch with most of them. I am welcome in their homes. Do you ever wonder why we don't entertain them anymore? Because they don't do you any good? I let the question soak in before continuing. I could see the perplexed and hurt look on her face as I continued this relentless attack. If this marriage continues, and I mean if, your attitude toward it must change. I will resume attending your social events and I will be treated as your husband, not as something secondary. If you can't bring yourself to do that simple thing, then there's no point in us continuing the relationship. This time she didn't say anything back. I wondered if I had gone overboard with my demands. If so, then so be it. We will invite our real friends into our home again, and you will treat them as friends. You must reestablish your ties with these people. They were with us long before you sailed away in the glow of your success. Have you ever wondered where I was while you were disappearing to your galas and dinner parties? More often than not, I spent very pleasant hours with these people. And here's something else for you to ponder. It wasn't long before they stopped asking about you. I understand you have another social gala tomorrow night. I will not be attending it with you as I have a meeting scheduled. However, if we decide to continue our relationship as a couple, I will try to be available in the future. In the meantime, I want you to think about what I said tonight. I don't want answers or excuses tonight. I want you to give your full attention to my next questions, and we'll discuss them on Friday night. First, do you want this marriage to continue? If so, do you give up your intention of having an affair with any other man? If no, then say so. I will contact my attorney and instruct him to begin divorce proceedings immediately. This is non-negotiable. Secondly, I want you to understand that my role in this house is going to change, drastically. I think you can guess that I will no longer be a simple, obliging husband. And finally, you will learn to be honest with me. You haven't been in the past, and I want to know why. We're going to have a lot of frank conversations about us and what you need to do to regain my confidence and trust in you. In some cases, it won't be very pleasant. Again, it's all up to you. If you can't be honest with me, then there's no point in us continuing our marriage. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted mentally and physically. It felt like hand-to-hand combat, but I was sure Edith had taken a lot more blows than I had. I'm going for a walk to calm down and clear my head. Don't wait up for me. I'll continue to sleep in the guest room for now. Perhaps after Friday we can discuss other arrangements. Am I giving you enough time to respond? I asked quietly, trying to ease the tension of the meeting. Yes, I think so, yes. I'll let you know if there's anything. Her voice broke. She was exhausted too, beaten verbally and mentally. I had been very hard on her, just like I wanted to be. I wanted her to experience the pain I was experiencing and realize the changes she should expect. It was not my intention to be soft. Only polite. Chapter 6. Consequences. Edith. I was stunned into silence. I had completely underestimated Howard. He'd given me an ultimatum, and I didn't have a chance to respond. He wasn't going to. I'd never seen him like that. I'd never seen him like that before. He challenged me to defend my actions and choose between his demands and divorce. There is no middle ground. I don't see any way to compromise. I heard the door close and he left for his walk. I got up and headed for the kitchen to make myself another gin and tonic. It was unusual for me to drink so much, but tonight was an exception. I needed to calm down and figure out what was happening to me. I had lost all the control I had once enjoyed. Howard had taken it from me as if I was powerless to stop him. And his questions? Of course, I wanted to stay married to him. I had no choice but to assure him there would be no cheating. He erased that from my mind in a matter of moments. I had choices to make. They seem simple now, but I had 2 days to think about them. What did he mean about me being honest with him? I had always been honest with him. This whole mess happened because I wanted to be honest with him. How could he doubt that? But there was something else. He never once said he loved me. He hadn't even once mentioned his feelings for me, other than anger and disappointment. Did I kill what we had between us? I don't know if I can handle it. I love him. I know I do. I hurt him. And like any wounded animal, he's fighting back. But will he fight for us? I felt a queasy feeling in my stomach. I put the glass down, knowing it wouldn't help. 2 days. 2 days to find a way to salvage nearly 30 years of loving and getting to know Howard. Almost 27 years of marriage. There had to be a way to make him love me again, but how? I was exhausted again. The lack of sleep, the stress, and this attack. I couldn't think straight. Go to bed, Edie. Call Jeannie and set up a meeting with her. Maybe she'll have some ideas. God knows I don't. Then go to bed. Chapter 7. Consequences? Howard. When I left the house, the air was warm and the sky was still brightening. I could feel the fresh breeze from the river as I walked towards the common square. I was breathing more calmly now. The worst is over, I thought. I had said everything I wanted to say. I'd held back everything I didn't want to say. I had promised her hope, but I didn't have the power to negotiate. And there was nothing pleasant or joyful about what I had just done. I hit her with words as confidently as if I had used my fists. I could see the effect of my blows. After a while, she just absorbed them as I applied them. There was no sign of struggle on her part. I should have felt better. I should have felt relief, perhaps even elation. But I didn't. I did what I thought was necessary to shock my wife and make her think about us. About our marriage, about our relationship, about our future. I left her no way out. On Friday, I will probably find out if we have a future. I thought about who I am and what I want. Did I want this marriage to last? Did I love Edie? I deliberately avoided confessing my love for her. I wasn't sure of her myself, so it was best not to mislead her if I had lost that love. How would I know? I once read that the test for love is to imagine your life without your partner. Divorce, death, any reason? How would I go on with my life? Would I be able to get over her cheating from years ago and forgive her? At first, I didn't think so, but now I'm not so sure. She couldn't take it all back. She couldn't make things right this late. Would I be able to accept that? Before I could make a decision, she had to admit her sin. She had to admit that she had inflicted another deep wound on me. And what about the deed I'd done? The new dominant Howard Carver. It was a deed. I knew it. Would I be able to justify it? I doubted it. Perhaps in some less aggressive and defiant way. In a way that I could become without disliking myself. I knew I could never go back to the soft, weak personality I used to be. Edie would never respect me, and I would likely find another man for her again. Nothing had changed since yesterday. I still needed to find out more about her. As I suspected, she still had secrets. Where were they hidden? What did I know about my wife? Had she cheated on me? Did I want to know that? I wondered if she had any idea how she had undermined my faith in her. It was getting dark, and I turned back toward our house. I had already calmed down from the confrontation I had experienced earlier. So many questions and so few answers, but the confusion remained. I still hadn't resolved anything today. I challenged Edie to decide what our future would be. It occurred to me that I was putting my fate in her hands. It's ironic. I'm in control, but Edie makes the decision. It's ironic. Chapter 8. Ginny's Advice. Edith. I was finally able to get a decent night's sleep. I wondered why, with so much confusion and chaos going on in my head. I crawled off the bed and headed to the bathroom. The shower brought me to a clearer state of mind. Last night, before I went to bed, I called Ginny. She agreed to meet me for lunch at our favorite little bistro. Thank God Jeannie was found. Nick, the head waiter, met me at the door. Miss Marden is expecting you, Mrs. Carver. He led me to the far corner to a table we knew was secluded and quieter. Thank you, Nick. Hi, Ginny. Thanks for coming. I was genuinely happy to see her. I desperately needed her guidance. You know I wouldn't say no to you, Edie, she smiled. Ginny was so solid, so down to earth. We'd been friends forever, for over a decade. Howard was wrong. I do have a real friend. Virginia Marden is the best friend I've ever had. I can tell her anything in confidence. She knows all my secrets. All of them. I had a conversation with Howard last night. Or should I say, he talked and I listened. He didn't want me to say anything. He said he'd give me a chance on Friday. Oh, Ginny, he was so cold, so angry. I've never seen him like that. He's a completely different person than he used to be. I don't know him at all. Tell me everything, Ginny said calmly. I told her everything I could remember. I told her about his last 3 demands. By the time I was done, I was almost crying. Ginny came over and patted my hands. Calm down, Edie, calm down. Let's talk about tomorrow night, she said. She was so nonchalant and calm. What are you going to tell him? I'm going to tell him that I love him. I'm going to tell him I don't want a divorce and I'm never going to betray him. I'm going to tell him that it was all a bad dream and that I don't know what made me think I could hurt him like that. What else? Oh, he says he wants to be with me when I go to these events. I don't know why exactly. He says he wants to be treated as an equal. He used to hate my parties. I don't know what to think. I'll do it, of course. I just don't know what he expects. And I'm happy that he'll be more determined. I want him to be my partner in everything. I'll tell him I welcome him, becoming more assertive with me. Anything else? I don't know what to say to his comment about my honesty. After all, I told him what I was thinking before I did anything. Isn't that a sign of honesty? I don't know what he meant. And you don't know? Think hard, Edie. Is there something you're most afraid to tell him? Ginny looked at me with her most penetrating gaze. I couldn't quite figure out what she was getting at yet. Oh my God, I can't tell him that. It would kill him. It would end our marriage. I can never tell him. I panicked. What if he already knows? He can't. You're the only person who knows. You wouldn't tell him. How can he know? I don't. But it's a dangerous game you're playing. He didn't bring it up because he thought it might be interesting. He's got something on his mind. From your description of last night, he was very specific and very prepared. He must have a reason for making it one of the big 3. Maybe he thinks I'm already having an affair? Maybe. Can you take a chance? I don't think I can bring myself to tell him. It would ruin us. Then I'd have nothing left. You've really ruined everything, haven't you, girl? There was no hint of humor in Ginny's eyes. I nodded. She was right. This was entirely my fault. What am I supposed to do? I can't lose him, I just can't. Ginny sat for a few minutes, sipping her coffee and thinking. Well, keep in mind that this advice is free, and you know what they say about advice being worth what you pay for it. Again, not a hint of a smile. Putting myself in your shoes, I'd tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I would withhold nothing. That way you wouldn't be able to stumble. Second, I would seek professional help to try to understand why you decided you needed an affair. I had an experience with a psychiatrist when Nels dumped me. They don't have all the answers, but they will definitely make you pay attention to all the issues. Third, I would suggest that you both seek marriage counseling. You will need it regardless of how tomorrow's conversation goes. That is, if you're still together. And finally, Howard seems tired of being in the background. I think he deserves to be an equal partner in your marriage, even though you make a lot more money than he does. I don't think your income matters unless he feels humiliated about it. Howard is a wonderful person. He should be treated that way. I sat and listened to Ginny, concentrating on every word. She kept her eyes on me, and I wanted her to. There was only one big stumbling block left. telling Howard about how I'd tricked him at the beginning of our marriage so I wouldn't get pregnant. That was my biggest fear. I was sure Howard would react violently to any confession I made. I was sure then our marriage would be over. Ginny, last night. He never once said he loved me. Not once. Maybe it's too late now. He said we could have a future, but, a future without love? I don't think I can live with that. It's better to let him get rid of me. I was depressed. I saw disaster around every corner. I didn't know how I could save my marriage. Don't give up, Edie. I think he still loves you, but ask him. That's the foundation of everything that's going to happen to both of you. If he didn't love you, why would he go through with all this? He would just walk away. Why would he challenge you if he didn't want to salvage something out of this mess? He's floundering too. He's not as sure of himself as he seems. He's waiting for a sign from you that you want to bring your relationship back to something he can accept and enjoy. You have to give him that chance. I don't understand. I want him to give me a chance. I don't hear any insecurity in his voice. I found it hard to believe what Ginny was telling me. People don't change overnight, Edie. Howard is not an ogre. He's hurt, angry, and trying to regain his dignity and control over something that shook him to his core. He's making a brave face, but I'm guessing he's not as confident as he seems. He's trying to get you to admit your mistake. You wake him up by poking him with a sharp stick. He reacts. He's just as unsure as you are about what's going to happen. You seem very sure of yourself. I still had a hard time accepting her assumption. I'm not sure. I wasn't there for you when all this happened. I've been trying to listen to what you've told me and get the gist of it. Remember, I only met Howard once, in passing. He's hardly aware of my existence, is he? I don't know. I don't think he knows. I don't. Right now, Ginny, I don't know anything for sure. I was on the verge of tears again. We stopped briefly to order lunch. Ginny doesn't drink, and I was fine with just iced tea. I needed a break from the intense conversation. Things were getting too complicated. I needed to simplify things so I could deal with it tomorrow. I needed to get back to the basics. What do I want and what does Howard want? It had to be simple. My only real fear was telling him about my reluctance to have children. He said I'm selfish. He's right. I've been selfish for a long time. That's not a good basis for a marriage, is it? I seemed to be talking not only to myself, but to Ginny as well. I looked at my salad and realized I was just picking at it. My appetite was almost nil. This was completely in line with my mood. Don't despair, Edie. I know it's hard, and I know you're berating yourself for what you've done. But what's done is done. Now it's time to decide what's important. What you want to accomplish tomorrow. You have one very good opportunity to save your marriage. A lot of women never realize this. You will have a captive audience. The stage is at your disposal. Now it's all about presentation. When you know what you want to say. When you know how you want to answer his questions. When you know what you need to do to make things work between you. Then you just do it. I sighed and leaned back in my chair. Ginny was right. I needed to prepare myself. I could do this to famous people and never think twice about it. I had to prepare myself to meet Howard. I had to have the courage to do the right thing. I was starting to feel a little better. I looked at Ginny and nodded. She was right. Chapter 9. Second Thoughts, Howard. I didn't manage to get much done at work. Friday is rarely a busy day, but this Friday was especially quiet. It gave me time to think about Edie and tonight. When I woke up this morning, all my thoughts were occupied. I knew what I was going to do. And now, too much time to think. Had I been too hard on her? Was I pushing her too hard? She looked scared at times, like she thought I was going to snap and do something cruel. Perhaps my act was too dramatic. What did I want out of all this? What did I hope to accomplish? I asked myself that over and over again. I still loved her. I knew that now. I knew it because I couldn't get her out of my mind. If that wasn't the case, I wouldn't be obsessing over her. I wouldn't be angry. I wouldn't have doubted our future. I knew what the problem was. Her secret. The one she didn't dare tell me. The rejection of our children. I still couldn't figure out how I felt about it. Was I angry? Yes. Would I be able to forgive her? I didn't know. Would she be able to bring herself to tell me? I didn't know that either. Would that be the deciding factor in whether or not we stayed together? Another thing I didn't know. One moment I was sure, and the next I was plagued by doubts. We'd been dating for 30 years. We had spent almost two-thirds of our lives with each other. We had so much invested in ourselves. I tried to imagine what my life would be like without her. I couldn't imagine it. Of course it would be lonely. When you're with someone for that long, you don't have long conversations about your life together. It all imprints itself on your psyche, in your being. Words are not always necessary. Sometimes a touch, a smile, or just a gesture is enough. The comfort of lying in bed with her next to you, even if you don't touch each other. The smell, the warmth, all those intangible things. 30 years. I didn't know what to expect from this evening. In a way, I was dreading it. I promised her that I would let her talk. I would listen to her politely without comment unless she asked for it herself. I was indebted to her. But then what? That part of my plan remained unformed. What then? Chapter 10. Confession. Edith. That evening, Howard came in early. He came home just after 5. I didn't know if I should worry or not. I was on the verge of death as it was. This sudden change in his habits was another cause for concern. But I soon realized it was something else. You came home early. Yes, it was quiet today. And I managed to leave a little after 4. It's a break for the weekend. He smiled at me when he said that. It was his first smile since Monday. Would you like a drink, the usual? He looked relaxed and almost normal. Yes, thanks. He did my usual G&T, but didn't bother pouring himself a glass of wine. I'm going to go change. He smiled again, turned, and headed upstairs. He was back in less than 5 minutes. He was wearing a new golf-style shirt, jeans, and loafer slippers. He looked completely different. And he was smiling. You look very relaxed, Howard. I wondered if he was trying to tell me something. He poured himself a glass of wine and turned to me again. It's been a very stressful week for me. For both of us. I'd like to tone it down. I don't want to push you anymore. I've been hard on you, I know. But let's enjoy dinner and talk afterward. I nodded. Thanks. I'm all worked up. I'm so upset about what happened. I'm so unsure of myself and what I want to say. Just be yourself. Tell me what you want to say. Be honest, Edie. Be honest with me, and above all, be honest with yourself. He called me Edie again. He hadn't called me that all week. Maybe everything would be okay. But it was a question again. A question of honesty. The one issue I still hadn't decided how to resolve. I made another one of his favorite dishes, and he acknowledged it. We talked a bit over dinner, and that helped me get a grip on myself. I wasn't looking forward to what was about to happen. More than that, I was dreading it. Talking to Ginny helped, but I still couldn't imagine how it would turn out. I didn't take a second drink. I don't think I could have held back. I needed all my wits about me. Alcohol is just false courage. Ginny taught me that. She was an alcoholic, a recovering alcoholic. It cost her her marriage and her relationship with her children. It was a very high price to pay. I met her shortly after she joined AA. I admired her courage. She blamed no one but herself and knew it was an illness. She dealt with it. I had no such excuse for my behavior. I was selfish. It all boiled down to this. I was always looking out for what I wanted. I was as blind to that as Ginny was blind to her alcoholism. Howard's harsh words shook me up and forced me to admit that I was selfish. But I could change. I knew I could change. It wouldn't be difficult. I just needed to be more considerate of others. I could do that. I would do it. Finished with the dishes, we walked to the living room and sat where we had sat Wednesday night. Now it was my turn. How to get started? I took a deep breath. Howard, I want to apologize first. I want to apologize for hurting you, and for being stupid enough to think you would accept my alleged behavior. I don't know what I was thinking, but it was unreasonable. Worse, I don't know what led to it. It certainly wasn't you. I never thought for a moment that you were anything more than a superb lover and a deeply caring person. Perhaps in so many years I've taken it for granted. Perhaps I've gotten so used to your love and support that I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have. I don't know, but I need to find out. You were wrong when you said I didn't have a true friend. I do have one. Virginia Martin. Jeannie is my closest friend. After you, of course, she's my confidant. Someone I can talk to without fear of it being passed on as gossip. Someone who has been through wars and can be honest with me. I appreciate her advice. I should have listened to it. She told me I was crazy to even think about having an affair. She told me you were the perfect husband, and I should value that above all else. She told me that if you found out, I wouldn't be able to control the consequences. Of course, she was right. So I thought that if I told you my intentions, you would understand me. I didn't want to go behind your back. I didn't want to deceive you. I didn't want to humiliate or belittle you for a second. It just didn't occur to me. But I did, didn't I? I humiliated and belittled you. Just telling you what I wanted was enough, wasn't it? I looked at Howard carefully. I don't know what reaction I was expecting, but he remained calm and poised. I continued. I don't know how to tell you how ashamed I am of what I did to you and how sorry I am. I know that apologizing alone isn't enough. Jeannie recommended a psychiatrist who she says can help me. I really need help to figure out why I acted the way I did. I'll call her next week to see if she'll agree to take me on as a patient. You should already know that I will do anything to save our marriage. I love you with all my heart and I can't imagine my life without you. I beg you to give me another chance. I'll do anything to keep us together. Anything. Ginny has offered marriage counseling. I'll take it if you agree. I want us to be together for the rest of our lives. I want that more than anything in the world, including my career. I'll leave her tomorrow if that's what you want. Nothing in my life is more important than you. I know I've behaved selfishly, but I can change. I can become a better person. I can rebuild relationships with our old friends. I can be more considerate of you. It won't be hard to do. It's not that I've forgotten how to do it. I just need to remind myself to be more considerate of others. I paused again to gather my thoughts. I watched Howard carefully. He was calm, but wary. His eyes told me that he was absorbing everything I was saying. Howard, I want to tell you, assure you, that I have never been unfaithful to you. I never have, and I never will be. I have put out of my mind every thought that I could have done such a thing to you. I saw the pain and hurt I caused you, and I couldn't live with myself if I did something like that. I paused again. I hoped to see some sort of reaction on Howard's face, but he was again calm and unresponsive. I wondered if he believed me. I know I haven't treated you very well. I haven't treated you as my partner and the most important person in my life. I think that's part of the selfishness I've succumbed to. I promise that I will change. You are too important to me not to admit that in front of our friends and coworkers. Again, I can only apologize for my actions. I am ashamed of my actions that belittle you and diminish your importance to me. You asked me to be honest with you and with myself. I tried to do that today. You really shook me with your words last night. I still haven't recovered from them. They scared and excited me so much. It took me a long time to realize all the things I did for you, not just my stupid idea of infidelity, but everything else. It hurt me to find out you were right. They were things I didn't want to know about myself, things I didn't want to admit to myself. I tried really hard to be honest with you. I don't know what else to say. I didn't lie to you today. I have never been unfaithful to you and I don't intend to. I recognize my shortcomings as a wife and partner. This is something I can change. I know it's something I have to change. If I have nothing else to say, I will only say that I love you. I love you with all my heart. I love you the same way I've loved you since the day we met. That hasn't changed, and I don't think it ever will. First of all, I need to know that you still love me. I just don't know what else to say. I finished. I had said everything I could think of. I answered his questions, his demands. They couldn't doubt that I was sincere. Once again, I was exhausted. I had held back my emotions and let them spill out for the last few minutes. I didn't cry anymore. I'm not a crier, I knew, but the tears were over. Now all that was left to do was wait for Howard's decision. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the calm man who was my husband. His face was covered by his hands, but when he took them away, I saw tears. Tears. He was crying. Not sobbing, not wailing, but tears were streaming down his cheeks and he looked at me with the most wistful expression I'd ever seen on his face. I'm so sorry, Edie. I believe you. I believe you've been faithful. I believe you want to change. I believe you love me. I believe you're ashamed of what you did to us. I believe all that. But I don't believe you've been honest. I gasped. What did he mean by that? I saw him react to my shock. Say, there's something you've kept from me for a long time. Something that hurt me in ways I didn't even realize. Something you couldn't bring yourself to tell me, no matter how much you wanted to. Do you know what it is, Edie? I nodded. He knew. How, I don't know, and it doesn't matter. He knew and he hadn't forgiven me for it. I knew now that it was over. My fate was sealed. I collapsed back into the chair. You robbed me of my family, us and our family, our children, even our grandchildren. You knew how important this was to me. You knew we both said we wanted that in our lives, but somehow you changed your mind. I was the only one who meant it. You decided to take that gift away from me. I could have accepted it if you had been honest and admitted your actions. Even at this late stage, I could have forgiven. But you just couldn't bring yourself to tell me that, could you? I'll have my lawyer prepare the papers on Monday. I'll move my things while you're away next week. In the evening, I'll take a few things with me and stay at a hotel. If any unforeseen circumstances arise, I will let you know which one. I think you'll be interested to know that I'm going to be bought out of TC&W. They are downsizing in tough times and offered me a very favorable deal to leave early. In a few months, when I get settled, I will probably start my own business. I have many more fruitful years ahead of me. I'm going to be busy. I'm sorry, Edie. I was really hoping you'd find the courage to tell me your worst secret. I'm sorry you couldn't. I wish you well. I watched him get up, his face still showing signs of tears, as he slowly walked out of the room and upstairs. I was paralyzed on the spot. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I wanted to scream for him to stay, to keep me safe, to hold me, to love me again. But instead, I did nothing. I sat and stared at the chair he was sitting in. It was empty. As empty as my life was. Epilogue, Howard. I was relieved that I didn't have to find a job and rebuild my life right away. I needed time to recover after a week that had turned my entire universe upside down. I found a really cute little apartment in Cambridge that was perfect for my needs. I bought furniture and colors I liked and settled in. So far, so good. I took a vacation. I wanted to go somewhere to forget myself, someplace Edie and I had never been. No memories. It was May, and I chose the south of France. I rented a car and drove from Monaco to Narbonne, from Marseille to Orange. I soaked up the surroundings, the people, and the wonderful food. For a while, I was happy. I sat in a seaside cafe in Saint-Maxime and pondered if I could live here. I didn't need much. I could take care of myself. If need be, my business could be run remotely via the internet. Maybe living here, among the French, I could forget about myself. Maybe. In the meantime, I'll go back to Boston and do some more thinking. I'm still trying to get used to being alone. Epilogue, Edith. Ginny picked me up from the chaos of my failed marriage. I was a mess. I couldn't work. I couldn't think. I just sat in our house and did what I did for a living. She took me to Seattle and on an Alaskan cruise. It was the isolation and escape I needed. Thank goodness for Jeannie. She has been my anchor these past weeks. My business seems to be getting better. I have some really good help. I'm sure my absence has been noticed at various social events, but with my divorce going public, I think they'll understand. Neither Ginny nor I need to work anymore. We've both saved enough to live far longer than we need to. I've never been prone to reckless spending. I had to fight with Howard's lawyer to get him to agree to a larger sum. He deserved at least that much, but wanted so little. I don't think there will be another man in my life. I just can't bring myself to replace him. If he ever comes along, I'll know that I don't have to do to him what I did to Howard. No matter what, I'll be alone. I'll have Ginny and all my business friends, but I won't have Howard. There won't be another Howard. There was always only one. The end. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.